Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Voice of John with Marianne Lawhon. I'm so pleased to be here. So I'm joined by a guest who's brave and willing to share her journey. And as a matter of fact, she did share her journey with me on the Voice of John radio program. The response was, it was overwhelming. It was a full-time job for me after the program. So without further ado, welcome Geri Fetherby. Geri, so happy to have you with me.
I am happy to be here.
Thank you. And Geri is a mom and a grandma, a stepmom. She is a recently retired public school educator. She is a passionate pro-life advocate. And her recent mission is to start a post-abortive ministry at Scranton's Providence Pregnancy Center. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm part of the team. Yeah.
She's part of the team and starting that up. So I am so blessed to have you, a beloved child of God. And Geri is, we talked about this, and I've said over and again that sometimes when we share our journey, we give somebody else the key to the prison that they're in. And that's kind of what happened with Geri on JMJ Catholic Radio. She touched on places that she didn't expect to. So Geri, welcome to the Voice of John video podcasting. So great to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Let's start off. I want to say thank you for trusting me and trusting those who listen to tell your story. And, that's such an important gift to break the silence that we live in and tell our stories. And so for our viewers, why have you decided now at this time in your life to step out, to speak up and take that silence away? Can you share with us?
I believe that only the Holy Spirit and a lot of discernment can reveal if a person is ready to come out with their abortion story, go public with their abortion story. And it took many years of prayer, Marianne. This didn't happen overnight for me. There was a lot of forgiveness of self, a lot of forgiveness of others, and praying to God, if this is His will. I had to learn even that phrase, what God's will be done. And I received so many affirmations within the past 2 years that the answer was yes. Most recently, I was reading a meditation on the Gospel of John's story where Jesus has the woman accused of adultery. And they all walk away, right? When they are accused by Jesus.
That first stone, nobody can.
Yes. And what does He do with her? He forgives her. He said, if I'm not going to accuse you, no one else will. I certainly won't. And so I think that Jesus knew that that woman did not have an authentic human life. Right? He knew that. And that's what He wills for all of us. So if I could just reach one single person, one single woman, and give her an understanding through my story that her abortion was an unnatural decision. That's what it was, an unnatural decision, because she has not yet been loved, truly loved, because the definition of love is willing the good for another. Right? And the people involved, herself, maybe her parents, maybe her friends, society, maybe her partner, they were not willing the good for her.
Right.
And that's what Jesus wants for us. And so He was able to give her a full recovery of her dignity. And that's what He did for me.
Thank
and
you.
So if I can share that and have one person, right, and I can give my gift back to God because He gave me that gift.
Yes.
Even my children, my husband, right, family, friends, they're all gifts to me. So now I can give my gift back to God.
Yes,
By
exactly. Exactly. Were you afraid, Jerry, of the repercussions of speaking out, like fallout from the family, rejection, judgment? Were you afraid to tell your story for a while?
Absolutely, which is why it took me 14 years, right? So, absolutely. My journey of healing began 14 years ago. And I always knew in the depths of my heart that that would be a place I would go. I would come out with it publicly because I have been in the public eye my whole life. Certainly as a public high school teacher and a singer. I sang for years with a jazz band for 16 years. I've been in a billion shows, as an entertainer. So I knew that I had that gift. God gave me that gift
Yep.
to be able to speak in front of people, prepare my story, and constantly tweak it and be able to share it. So I did fear that for quite a long time ago. If you asked me to do this 3 years ago, I would have refused. It wasn't God's will until now.
Yeah.
So I think of the experience of retiring from the public high school. And that was a big factor for me. I knew that prudence, right, had to play a big part in my life because those young people, there were many kids who I knew that were, potentially in that situation. And I did not think it would be prudent for them to know my story at that time.
Okay.
But if they found out now through this, so be it. Maybe it would help to.
Sure it will. I'm sure your story is intended by the Lord Himself to help somebody say no to that decision. For our viewers, though, Jerry, every story starts with the beginning. And so, can you tell us a little bit about your beginning, your childhood, your family, the roots?
Sure. I grew up in a Catholic home, uh, four siblings, and it was beautiful. It was your typical Sundays where we went to church. There was a very strong faith, both from my mother and my father and my siblings, and we prayed the rosary on our knees on Good Friday. So there are beautiful moments that I clearly remember with my family. We had our own pew in the church, right?
We did.
We did, right? My dad later on was a Eucharistic minister, so that was my mother was very involved. I went to Catholic school from grammar school all the way through college, and my faith also, unfortunately, when I was a young girl, made me fearful of my mother's wrath. Um, not through anger and not through abandonment, when I was pregnant, but I definitely feared that voice of a lie. I feared that she would disown me because I just didn't know any better. Society telling me, that this is the right thing to do.
Yes.
So I was 18 years old, and but by the time I was 12, I had already been um, molested in different ways, in different ways, and it was just it's what happened, and I grew into the thinking that I was special. So I didn't tell my mom or my dad that this was happening to me because I it started to change the whole way I saw myself.
Yes.
I knew that it was wrong because of what I was taught, but a young mind doesn't accept it like that because the grooming is so viciously
Yes.
salacious and so viciously small in small increments. So that really changed how I viewed myself, maybe compared to my sisters or my friends. I was getting this special attention. when in fact it was damaging me.
Yeah. And Jerry, at that age, a young girl or boy is very vulnerable. Just by that age and that stage in your life, and then to have that attention, um, and as you use the word grooming, that you're special to me, you're the prettiest of the family, or I love you the most. It's what drives a victim into their silence, where they don't tell their parents. And you know, to all of you listening, it's so important to listen to what Geri is saying throughout this podcast, and open up these conversations in your family. Um, we've had an overwhelming response to that insight, Geri, and it's often defines or it affects the decisions we make going forward.
Yes, yeah, it absolutely does. Um, yes, because how I saw myself in high school, or growing into maturity, all of that, the friends I chose, all of that, all of that. So I graduated from high school, and there was a party in the summertime, and I went, and there was drinking, but it wasn't excessive drinking or anything like that. I wasn't 21, but you only had to be 18 in New York then. Um, and so I can remember, I don't remember being drunk or anything like that. And it was the end of the party, and a person there asked if I wanted to ride home. So I accepted, and I knew who he was. He wasn't a friend or anything like that, but he didn't take me home. He took me to a wooded area, and we raped him. And I remember going home, walking in, my parents were still awake, and I just went right upstairs to the bathroom, and I showered, and um, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want to remember it. I wasn't a virgin, so he stole. And after that, I just went back to work, and worked a little bit because I didn't go to college that semester. I chose to wait a year, stay home a year. But again, the abortion was part of that decision. Mhm. So I found out I was pregnant, and I thought, what am I going to do now? And so I confided in some family members and some people I trusted, and they all said the same thing. Mommy, no pun intended, but mommy will kill you. Not, mommy will, or this is the best thing for you, and don't worry about it. I'll pay for it, because that was certainly a concern. And telling that person, there was no reaction. There was no reaction or response from that person.
A rapist?
Yes. Yeah. No, I did not try to get in touch with that person, but somebody through somebody did, and that was never even a blip in that person's mind. I don't think.
Wow.
That person has since passed away, and I pray for him.
How beautiful.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I pray for him.
What a beautiful gift of forgiveness for somebody who changed your whole life and drove you into decisions that you couldn't imagine, the repercussions of those decisions.
Yeah. Marianne, I say, even now, I say it wasn't a blip in his mind. But who am I fooling, right? And I mean, yes, I was the one that experienced the trauma, the physical trauma, the mental trauma, and the experience. But we know that our men, they're not forgetting it either. So how his life changed, I'll never know. I'll never know. But it did, because he knew, right? He knew that I was pregnant as a result of that. So always had to stay with him. So I don't know how it ended up. I do know that he passed away though.
Yeah.
Found
You
that
know,
out.
it's so important because when people will use rape as a reason or something that happened, I think it's so important because we would often hear that kind of, oh, well, it almost never happens, or it's rare that that would happen, but it does. And we want to be here for the hard cases, those difficult cases of rape or incest or what's being presented as life of the mother. We want to address all of this in our programming. So, Geri, that
And,
is part of your message.
right. And I want to make it clear, I did not have an abortion because I was raped. Do you know what I mean? That was not my reasoning. That was not my thinking. Oh, I was raped. I don't know what's going to happen, what kind of child this will be. Or, no, that was never part of it. It was the fear. It was the fear, literally, of telling my parents. And I know now that had I told them, my mother and father would have embraced this child. They
Yes.
absolutely would have embraced this child. I know that. You
Yeah.
know, that's with my siblings and everybody else. And of course, my life would have been different. But um, that's a part of the redemption. That my life wasn't different, and so I could have continued in the lifestyle, which I did for many years, because it manifests itself somehow, and that's how it changed. It changed my life. I was a mess because I couldn't speak about it. I didn't tell anybody. Nobody ever asked me how I was. The experience itself was very lonely. I remember going into the office and there was women seated all around. And the nurse, or whoever she was, just simply pointed to each of us and said, "Why are you having an abortion?" And I just simply said, "I was raped." And she just moved right on. She moved right on. There was no discussion, there was nothing. It was very cold.
Yeah. That's the counseling that they give. Yeah.
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 I've never experienced it again. I've never got into one to try to, talk and try to, I don't know, counsel or do anything like that. I've never experienced that, so I wouldn't know. But from what I read, you're right.
Yeah.
That is the counseling that happens. It's cold. There's nothing, there's nothing life-giving about it. There's nothing affirming. There's
Yes.
nothing. It's only vilifying. Mhm.
So you had these traumas, and they are the molestation. Um, you you reverted to silence in that rape. You reverted to silence, and now you've had an abortion, and it became this silence. So all these wounds are in your heart, in your soul. You're carrying these wounds so deeply. How did it change you? How did it affect the decisions you made now going to college or in your post-abortive years,
So
Jared?
exactly, it did. It did affect everything. I did not go to college. I was depressed. I didn't understand why I was depressed. I stayed home for a whole year. I worked 4 jobs. I did anything to get out of the house. I, and I remember thinking how worthless I was. I don't remember ever feeling as though I wanted to take my life. That was not something that I recall. But as I went to college and moved through that part of my life, I was very guarded. And at the same time, promiscuity just seemed to make sense to me. I didn't value who I was. So it didn't make any difference at that point. And it wasn't as though I was afraid of becoming pregnant or anything. It was reverting right back to that need, right? That desire to be wanted, that desire to be loved, having no idea that only comes from God. So it was rough. And then God blessed me. and I met a wonderful, wonderful man who became my husband. And then we had two children together. And my life was very healthy, very full. And for 15 years, I was a wonderful wife, I'd like to think. He was a wonderful husband and a wonderful mother. And I raised, although I have to say, I absolutely have vivid memories when my first son was born. I had, and I don't know what they call it, psychology or whatever, but I had what could have been known today as post-traumatic um, after birth.
Syndrome. Yes, PTSD.
I absolutely had that because I have a vivid memory of holding my son when he was young and getting back to the abortion, and flashing back, but only for a moment, flashing back to that. And that was intense. That was intense because I can't say that I wanted to hold my son and love him. It was a weird reaction to that, but that only happened once.
Geri, that's again another very significant statement because the silence, it was buried there. And it is something that we realize now that while the world is telling you how empowering it is to be able to abort your child, to kill your offspring, it's a wound that's deep there, and it will exhibit itself at a most unusual time, sometimes in a playground at a child's first birthday. And do you know, as I said to you all, Geri was on JMJ Catholic Radio, and that was one of the questions that a caller presented to me after the radio program was, when you found out you were pregnant and happy, did it compare in your heart to when you were pregnant and terrified?
Yes, it absolutely did. Absolutely.
Yes.
So when I was married for 15 years, and my husband was tragically killed. He was 45 years old, and my children were 6, and my son just turned 9 years old. So that tragedy and that experience of widowhood put me into a spin that was pretty intense. And I was widowed for 5 years, and I was on the mess. And that's when the manifestation of the abortion really tweaked, reared its head. I was in very unhealthy relationships.
Yes.
And but that's, everybody definitely grieves very differently. But I learned through counseling, through post-abortive counseling, how that was a big part of the manifestations of what happened. So yeah, so that took me to a moment where God revealed himself most profoundly in my life. And then everything in my life changed for the better. It started with meeting my husband that I'm married to now for 18 years. And it was divine providence of how I met him. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story to be told maybe another time of how I met him.
There's a JMJ Catholic Radio. Didn't forget that you're coming back on Valentine's Day. They're holding me to it, just so you know.
That's a perfect time. Love stories for Valentine's Day is perfect. Thank you. So about 6 months after I got married, right, God had something really big in store for me. And I was taking my son to a guitar lesson. So I took him to a guitar lesson, and the woman there, a lovely young woman, younger than me, invited me in for tea. And so she did, and I came in, and I'm standing there, and she says she was in the kitchen getting tea. And so there's a big bookcase with books. And so I walked over and looked at the books, and I thought, hmm. She came back in with the tea, and I pointed to the books, and I said, these books, they're all Catholic books. Is that all you read?
Much of anything fun?
And in a beautiful face, and she said, is there anything else?
Yeah.
And she said, take one. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not that Catholic. I'm not that Catholic. So she just very beautifully walked over. She picked out a book and she handed it to me. And I looked at the cover and I said, Medjugorje, who is she? And she said, it's not a she, it's a place, Medjugorje. Just read it. So I went home that night and I opened the book and I began to read about these miracles. Wait a minute, I heard about Fatima when I was a child, but this is still happening. So that began this profound sorrow in me, and I didn't know why. And I would go downstairs, and I was only married a few months, and that's not the healthiest thing for a new marriage. I feel my husband's rolling over, he's seeing me crying. He's like, is it me? Is it me? I'm like, no, I don't know what it is. And I would go downstairs and I would just have these sobbing moments. And it was the beginning of a reconversion into my faith. So I went to go see Monsignor Essa at the suggestion, because I told this young woman what's happening to me. So she said, oh, you need Monsignor Essa. I went, oh, he used to go to my husband's business. So he was a very good customer of my late husband. God is so good, isn't he? So when I saw him, he told me I had to go to this conference. So, well, what's a conference? And he said it's a place where you go and you pray and you hear speakers. And you go for a whole weekend. So, like religion conference? Like Catholic religion? Like CMD class?
Still not that Catholic, huh?
I still was not that Catholic, right? But I was blown away by this book. So I said to him, oh, my husband will never go with that. He'll never go with me on that. And he looked at me and he said, oh, yes, he will. So I went home. I'm on the computer not a laptop, but a real computer, home computer. And I'm looking this up. My husband comes around the corner and he goes, what you doing? I said, oh, Monsignor Essa gave me this flyer to go to this thing. Would you go with me? Sure. You will? So we go to the 100-year celebration of the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Oh, Monsignor, the Sacred Heart. Yes.
I know the Sacred Heart of Jesus because there was a picture of Jesus, the Sacred Heart, on my refrigerator growing up. That's all I knew, right? So my husband and I go to this conference, and I go to this, the women part. There's about 300 women, and we're all there, and we hear a woman named Janet Bankman, and her talk was titled The Authenticity of Women. And I was blown away. It was a 1-hour talk, and I was just blown away. And I pretty much ran out of there, went right to her table, and I bought everything. I bought the book, I bought the DVDs, I bought workbooks, and I knew right then and there that I would be going home, talking with my pastor, and trying to have this Women of Grace study, maybe at the church or wherever. My husband attended the Christopher West Theology of the Body. And so it was beautiful. It was a beautiful weekend. I actually had an opportunity during the break to go over to Jeanette, introduce myself and my husband, and we told her our meeting story and how providential it was on how we met in our love story. So she loved hearing that. So I went home.
She's beautiful, isn't she? Like
Yeah.
so internally glowing, beautiful. Yeah.
And it was fun to hear that we had so much in common. She, as well, was an English teacher and a director of plays and shows, and that was my life. So that was kind of fun to hear that. So I came home, I went to my pastor, and I got his permission to actually have it in my home, because that was my goal, is to have these women. And it ended up that there were 12 women that came to my home, and we did this 8-week study. And after each week, a DVD of a half hour, and then there was, a workbook that you worked on, and then there was a little textbook that you read. And after that half-hour video, the women and I, we would sit there and we'd look at each other and we'd say, how come we never learned this? How did we grow up from Catholic school, from, grade school to whatever, and not have this? Why didn't anybody tell us this? And I certainly understand the reasons now. We were catechized, we were not evangelized. And it blew this whole study blew myself, as well as the other women that were doing it with me, blew us away. And it changed the lives of many of those women. And I'm still very, very good friends with many of them, and we've continued on. So at this point now, I'm a changed woman. It was that radical. Now I'm still not healed from the abortion, but all of this was the beginning that Jesus was allowing in my life to start the healing journey. He doesn't, although he hit me like an anvil over the head with this, that healing from the abortion was about to come, right? So again, I'm a changed woman, and that could be a dangerous thing, Marianne. It could be a dangerous thing to the secular thinking that I had previous. It could be dangerous to friends that I had. It could be dangerous to a new husband. Like, where's my Victoria's Secret? I married her, didn't I? What's Mother Teresa? Who's this?
Yeah.
So,
and you as an educator in a public schools, I'm sure, that
absolutely.
new Geri is
The new improved Geri was bold, and bold without prudence. And that boldness, I won't share the story, but that boldness got me suspended for 2 days at one time. Mm-hmm. And then later on in my career, I was suspended for 8 days for speaking the truth. 8 days without pay. And I was taken out of my classroom by security guards in front of my students. Oh, it was intense. Oh, but that was all part of God's pruning me. So
right.
yeah. So
Geri, what courage! What courage! But if I can just interrupt just for a little bit, and we'll come back to it. The importance of what Geri is saying to all of us to be educators of our own children, because speaking the truth kind of got her in a little bit of hot water. But I want you to I want to come back to that a little bit, but if you would continue with the healing journey, the redemption story.
So that summer, the women and I decided that we would go to this retreat in Malvern that Jeanette was giving. So it was kind of the culmination, just timing wise, it was beautiful. So it was a kind of culmination. So I went to that retreat, and it was there that Jesus totally revealed himself to me. And this is how it happened. It was a Saturday night. They had a healing mass. I didn't even know what a healing mass was. And there was this incredible priest from Idaho who was there. And Jeanette was at the podium. And her gift is reading hearts. I have to say, I was a little freaked out about that because I never experienced that before. There was about 300 women or so in the audience. I was all the way in the back with the other women that joined me. 10 out of the 12 women joined us. And we were praying, and Jesus in the monstrance And the priest was walking through the aisles with Jesus. And as he was walking, he would slow down or stop. And Jeanette from the podium would see there's a divorced woman. Her heart is aching. So she was telling all these stories. And I was kind of mesmerized with that. I was like, what is she doing? This is really deep. This is beautiful. I was in awe, but I was also, one side of me was, what's going on? And as the priest was coming with Jesus in front of me, and there's Jesus right there, no further than this. And Jeanette from the podium says this: there is a woman in the back who at the age of 18 was raped in a blue MG. And Jesus wants her to know that he forgives her. I was just floored. Literally, I fell to my knees. And for her to be so detailed, because I remember my first reaction was, she's talking about me. Me. And I dropped to my knees and I crawled on my knees to the stage where there was a priest waiting for confession at any point. And I literally crawled on my knees, and I was oblivious to anyone that was around me. And I sat in the chair and I said, Father, forgive me. It has been 20 minutes since my last confession. Because right before this event, right before this evening, there was confession. So I went to confession and I sat in his chair for about 40 minutes. And he was just incredible. The love. They say that when you go to confession, you're not confessing to the priest, you're confessing to the priest in persona of Jesus Christ. I truly felt like I was literally looking at the face of Jesus, and Jesus was responding. It was forever life-changing. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the impact that had on me.
Yes.
And it was a gift. It was truly a gift, because not everyone experiences the love of Jesus and the magnitude of that. Yeah, not everyone experienced that. So what a grace he gave, and he saved just for me.
Yes.
He loves me that much. Right?
That was beautiful. And our beautiful sacrament for those that are listening that are Catholic, of the Catholic faith. And at some point I will be doing a video podcast about the sacrament of reconciliation, we call it now. But a most beautiful sacrament. And we are really talking to Christ in that confessional. We are seeking his healing. And so thank you for sharing that, Geri, that beautiful moment.
The priest is there as the conduit and to give us the grace,
Yeah.
and the full healing. So it really is a beautiful, beautiful sacrament that we as Catholics have.
Yes.
Love for everybody to experience it.
And so that was a moment in time where there was healing. There was a feeling of the love of God, the love of Jesus, the reason for this beautiful Holy Week commemoration, the outpour of his blood for us to forgive us, the Lamb of God, forgiving, took our sins away. And you experienced that. You shared it with us. Thank you, Geri. But your journey really just begun.
It did. That was the healing moment, right? But the journey began when I came home, and my daughter wanted to go on the pro-life walk. So I went on the pro-life walk with her my first time. And then I went to the pro-life breakfast in Scranton. And who was the guest speaker but a woman named Teresa Burke? and she spoke on her post-abortion ministry called Rachel's Vineyard. And so I bought the book, and I thought, okay, I'm going to buy this book. I wasn't really, um, I don't know, it just wasn't connecting yet, right? It wasn't connecting yet. The healing from that and what was about to come. So I went home and I started reading this book of all stories about women who have had abortions and were healed, through this weekend retreat. So I was thinking, wow, I think that's the next step for me. I need to go on this weekend retreat. And so I called my sister and I asked her to come on. And she came up for the weekend and I told her everything. And that was the first time that I spoke publicly about my experience of the abortion. And she went home and she researched it and sent me all the information. And Marianne, this is the part that I really get how long it takes to have that full healing, right? And I understand, and this is why through the Providence Pregnancy Center, I'm so graced to be able to head up or lead, not lead, but be a part of a team of this post-abortive ministry because it takes so long. It took me 9 months before I actually went to Rachel's Vineyard. It does. It takes a long time because it takes so much fortitude, which is our moral courage, right? Not the secular courage, the moral courage to speak about this, to think about it. Did it really happen? Of course it really happened. But who is involved and are they responsible and all of that. So it really plays on your head. So it took me a long time to commit to go to the weekend retreat. And the woman there was incredible. She emailed me back and forth. And then I went to that retreat. And
Yes.
that retreat, it was the cherry on, it was the PA resistance. And I was scared. I was scared going there Friday night. I was alone and I was scared. But I told my daughter, my youngest daughter, I told her what I was doing. And I invited her to come to the resurrection mass on Sunday, and she came. She was young. She was young. She was only in high school. But what a witness that was for her. Because, to this day, she is pro-life. She is a beautiful, beautiful gift. And so, we could actually talk about that instruction and the importance of that.
Yes.
And how important it is for parents to, the world will take your child if it can. And if we don't communicate, and if we don't share our stories with our children, somebody will. And it won't necessarily be the people that we want to.
Exactly. And for those of you watching this, Rachel's Vineyard, Father Frank Pavone was very instrumental as their clergy person, and his stories have been phenomenal of his compassion for women who have experienced abortion is so reflective of Christ's compassion for anyone who has gone through this trauma. It's not just for women. Am I correct, Geri? It's for
That's correct. Oh, sure.
siblings of aborted children can find release.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It doesn't have to be just nurses, healthcare. The year that I was there, there were about 30 people. And I've since been on team for the last, 10 years or so. Afterwards, going back, not as a counselor because I'm not certified, but as a facilitator. And I've never experienced the magnitude that I experienced the year that I went. And there was a husband and wife team who had aborted their own child, 40 years before. There was a 93-year-old woman there. I mean, this pain it does not leave you. You can suppress it. You can absolutely forget about it, but it still plays a part in your life. Somehow, some way, God will touch your heart. If you let Him, He will touch your heart for you to release the pain, release the agony, release the shame, release the guilt. And Rachel's Vineyard is one of the beautiful weekend retreats to help you do that.
And you can get in touch with Rachel's Vineyard just by going to rachelsvineyard.org. Isn't that right, Geri? Yeah. And I encourage anybody, and I've had women who say, well, yeah, but that was 50 years ago. I'm old now. When God speaks to your wound, no matter how fresh, no matter how old, God is there to heal the wound. And as Geri said, like 22 years of silence was a long time before she's able to really advocate to you, to so many of you. And I believe your testimony, Geri, will save lives, will touch hearts, will lead somebody to redemption.
The Rachel's Vineyard experience was 14 years ago. Remember, so this is the time now, and through PPC, I mean, what a God coincidence that is, the Providence Pregnancy Center. So if there are local people in the Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, northeastern Pennsylvania area that know someone or looking for healing themselves, this is going to be such an important leg of the Crisis Pregnancy Center. So in addition to helping women who are in crisis pregnancies and who have chosen life and need help, this center will also have this ministry, and it will be, we haven't decided if it's going to be bi-weekly or monthly or weekly, but we're going to dedicate time just to be there, just to be in that surrounding, in that office area, and just have it an open open door. So if anybody wants to come, it'll be part of a website, and this is it, to talk, and your journey of healing could begin with just a talk. It doesn't have to be, yes, go to Rachel's Vineyard now that we've had a talk. No, because God has to work in each and every woman. That's how we're going to heal our nation, one woman at a time. One woman at a time. Right?
Yes, yes. And you don't have to be a Catholic. That was something, the name Rachel's Vineyard is very biblical. It's very Christian. Rachel wept for her children. One of the things, Geri, that I would like to discuss with you, because as you said, you are a recently retired public school educator. And one of the questions I have when I'll say, we have programs from K through 12, and it's like, oh, that's too soon to talk about about abortion. We don't talk about abortion. We talk about the sacredness of life and how we, in every day, by the way we treat others, by the respect, by the way we dress. That's the things that make us pro-life, and it's never too soon. But Geri, to parents or grandparents that are listening, and to all of us about our educational system, why is it so important to keep education and communication? I think you've just said that in every way you can, from childhood through telling your mom your story or your sister. So talk to us about communication.
In the public school system, the parents are not regarded as the ultimate caretakers of information. The school is, and that is not the way it's supposed to be. So I have always been a supporter of parents, speaking up and speaking out, because they are the ones raising the children. The parents need to raise the children, not the school. And the sooner that you can be comfortable with speaking about this idea of abortion, like you said, How do we do it with young children? Well, we do it by affirming what is there. Teach the child, the beauty of birth in the womb. Let them grow to know exactly what is happening, both physically and spiritually. And it really does make a difference, because I think had my parents, had that communication with me, maybe I wouldn't have feared. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know, but it wasn't there. And I see the difference of the kind of communication that I had with my daughter, in particular because my other children were grown and they were raised by that time, they were out. So my daughter was there for this whole healing, and it really made a difference in her understanding the message of life. And it's not pro-life or pro-choice, but just, right? Just what's natural. What is natural? Life is natural and given to us by God.
I know one of 7 kids, and every time I was second in line in a family of 7 kids, but just putting our hand over her belly and feeling a sibling kicking and wondering, would it be a brother or sister? That was how we were taught. That was, my mother taught us great things. And chastity, always modesty and dressing and stuff. So there's so many levels of teaching the pro-life story, and it should start at a very young age, because sometimes until a parent is ready to have the talk, the kids know way more than you know, and that's the truth of it. So there's so much, and again, communicate with your children. And one thing I'm so grateful you talked about too, Geri, was the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And I know my homestead, my mom and dad's home, was enthroned to the Sacred Heart. Monsignor Esif, of course, was a good friend to me. Oh my gosh, for the last 50 some years, but he's an awesome person. So in closing, I know there's a beautiful poem that you wrote, I believe, when you were at Rachel's Vineyard.
I chose not to tell my mom up until she passed away a few years ago. She was 93. And when I came home from Rachel's Vineyard and I began the journey of healing, my entire relationship with my mother changed. 3 marvelous skips slid from my womb. One took flight to heaven, resting in the arms of Jesus. 2 are gracing this world, coddled, loved, and nourished in faith. I pray to you, sweet infant Anthony, with a mound of curly dark hair all bundled in blue, snuggled in the nook of our Blessed Lady's arm. Murmur to me what heaven is like. As you glide down a cloud on your 3-wheeled trike, stopping to grab gulps of milk from your sippy cup, whisper to me what heaven is like. For 32 years, I've silently sung you to sleep with the music of raindrops tapping on it. Talk to me, young Anthony, as you witness your handsome half-brother Patrick and beautiful half-sister Hannah sweeping past God's eternal thought into my womb, impregnating me with the seeds of love. The angels sing to bless their welcome into my arms as I choose this time to cooperate with God's grace and grow in holiness and marriage. Shout to me from heaven, young man Anthony, for a spirit impregnated with the understanding of God's divine will. For you lovingly watched God welcome into heaven your half-brother and sister's father, my late husband. Hold his hand until we meet again. Watch over me, Anthony at 32, and may your tiny hands sprinkle blessings upon the man who stole my gift. Like the thief crucified with Jesus, that he too may one day be welcomed into heaven. Teach me to acquire a fertile soul. Open my heart for the courage and fortitude to end the silent screaming, and lovingly, gently, in newfound truth, help me to help young men and women choose life. My infant, my baby, my toddler, my joy, my boy, my young man, my son. Open the heavens that I may gradually birth Jesus in the lives of others.
It just takes my breath away to hear that, to hear your love for your child and your knowledge that you'll be together one day. Thank you all for joining us, for being with us, for being part of the Voice of John. And thank you, Geri Fetherby, for this beautiful, beautiful program. I'm so grateful.